Good evening. I'd like you to indulge me for a moment by closing your eyes. Are all eyes closed? I'd like you to imagine a unicorn. Do you see it? What does it look like? You don't have to tell me. We'll come to it. By the way, a unicorn in startup lexicon is a company that's valued at over $1 billion US. Now, my name is Kola Aina, and I'm the son of an African serial entrepreneur. As far back as I can remember, my siblings and I had a front row seat watching our dad go through several entrepreneurial adventures. From dabbling in the beverage industry in the 80s to building a finance company that gave small loans to businesses before the financial crisis of the 90s. From rearing cattle, he actually reared cattle, like we had a huge ranch, right? To building one of the most loved dairy brands in northern Nigeria. And finally, he tried bottling water. Water, guys, like free water. And then eventually built a pretty successful public printing and publishing business. My dad worked really hard. He was a hustler. He never gave up. He always tried something new. And so I was privileged to have a first-hand immersive experience into building a startup at a very early age. Our home was the perfect startup foundry. And so I learned very early that to build a successful business, you had to work really hard and you had to be gritty. Ironically, despite raising us in this really intense entrepreneurial environment, my parents somehow expected that I would fit into their preconceived mold of sliding into taking over a family business. As you would imagine, this didn't work out very well. So at the age of 25, with my engineering degree, my MBA, and some experience, corporate experience, I essentially walked away from the chance of living a very secure, safe life as my parents had imagined, and rather chose to take my chance in life by finding my own way. What is he thinking? Some said. My mind was made up. For some reason, I was completely sold out to this idea that the only life worth living was one where you dance to your own music. And so I decided that I was going to do something that would allow me to solve lots of problems. It also couldn't cost a lot of money because I didn't have any. And of course, I couldn't go back to my parents because I told them, hasta la vista. But more importantly, it had to lay the foundation for becoming an enabler of other people, because I had discovered early on that this was the purpose of my life. And so I decided I was going to do technology. I was going to build software. But there was just one problem. I couldn't write a line of code. And so I began the search for a co-founder. And eventually, Chuka and I started our software company and somehow decided that we were going to take on the challenge of Nigeria. And so I moved back and started from the bottom, bootstrapping the company, one customer to the next, way before startup investing became as cool as it is today. Many years later, my focus has now moved from building the software company for myself to helping others build the companies of their dreams through our early-stage venture fund called Ventures Platform. So allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Kola Aina, and I'm a builder. My mansions are in the forms of people and their ideas. Today, I am focused on building platforms. Platforms that build community, platforms that enable sharing, and platforms that invest in young people to create opportunities. At Ventures Platform, we are enabling the youth of the continent to turn the lemons we've been handed into lemonade. And in the last 2 years, we've invested in 22 companies. We've interacted with over 2,000 founders. We've trained about 3,000 young people. We've built a pretty amazing campus. And we've seen our portfolio do multiples in returns. It doesn't end there. We've also served a couple thousand cups of coffee, because coffee, of course, is the fuel of the future. And we are just getting started. You see, when I was 13, I had a pretty bad accident and lost my memory. I never really regained full capacity of it. So you will have to forgive me if I forget your first name after the first time we meet. I have a hack for that, though. So over the years, I have focused on optimizing my memory for the pleasant past experiences of my life. And I tend to rely on others to remind me of the negatives when it becomes important. I also tend to rely on technology a lot to remind me of the critical data points like birthdays, meetings, and telephone numbers. Fortunately, it sounds terrible, but this disability works out pretty well, actually. Having very little recollection of the negative experiences of the past essentially makes me an incurable optimist. And for this, I am eternally grateful. And so, despite all that is wrong with and in Africa, all I see are silver linings. Today, more than ever, young Africans are building the future, and indeed, they are the silver lining. That is why my team and I are committed to building the future of the continent by investing capital and providing the much-needed support to 100 startups over the next 4 years. And so, while my dad raised cattle many years ago, today we support a company like Thrive Agric, founded by 2 young men, Uka and Ayo, Uka a farmer, Ayo a software engineer, who are using technology to connect smallholder farmers with resources and helping to increase their yield 4-fold. And while I passed on the opportunity to step into the easy shoes of taking over the family printing business, today we now support Printivo, founded by Oluyomi, who's building the future of digital printing in Africa. But there's more, much more than I can mention. Shola of Paystack and Ian of Flutterwave are building payment infrastructure and powering billions of dollars in transactions. Kendall of Tizeti recently raised $2.3 million to connect more people to the internet more affordably. And the lovely Afua, who you just met, she was just on this stage, is empowering women all over the continent, building a community of hundreds of thousands of young women, proving that what a man can do, a woman can do. These ladies are slaying. All over the continent, young Africans are exhibiting curiosity, empathy, and urgency at an unprecedented level, and in doing so, they're solving real problems. But there just isn't enough African capital to support them. In 2016, African startups raised about $400 million to build the future. The reality, though, is most of this capital comes from foreign investors, and we're not complaining. As a matter of fact, we want more. But there are a few questions that keep me up at night. The first one is, who will own our future unicorns? And more specifically, how do we get Africans at home of means, and those of you in this room in the diaspora, to get involved and invest in more of these companies? The future of Africa will not be built by government or grants, but by entrepreneurs who leverage technology to build and scale businesses fast. But building this future requires capital. and in increasing numbers, African capital. Capital with context and empathy. Capital on a mission, your capital. It turns out that early-stage technology investing in Africa can actually be a great bet. So if you had put money in Andela, by the way, is a software talent accelerator. If you had put money in Andela in the early days, you would have made 10x on your investment. Iroko TV, the African Netflix, if you invested when they started, today you would have actually made 3,000%. Like, guys, 3,000%. Ladies and gentlemen, in the beginning, I asked you to close your eyes. And thankfully, some of you did. Let me guess what kind of unicorn you saw. Was it white? Blonde head? Well, let's try something different. Picture a unicorn that's black, with an afro punk, braids maybe. Picture a unicorn that kicks and hustles when it doesn't get the food it deserves, in this case, cash, right? And that gallops in celebration when it does. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kola Aina, and I'm an African investor. We are investing in the future of Africa because we believe that with the right support, gritty African founders would solve the toughest problems on the continent, will create new markets, will expand existing markets, and deliver value for themselves and their investors. I believe that Africa will produce unicorns, and the time to get in on the ground floor is now. And so I invite you to put your capital to good use. Now, I'm not oblivious to the fact that the continent suffers a bad media rap. Neither am I unaware that we have insufficient stories of success. I mean, I just told you two, right? I'll try to tell you some more next time. We also suffer a host of individual biases. But I ask you to be like me for a moment and lose your memory of that past, but rather imagine a brighter African future. A future that you and I can build together, a future that you can invest in. Join us as we build the future of Africa. Thank you.